Magnificat anima mea Dominum,
et exsultat spiritus meus in Deo salutari meo.
Welcome to the new episode of the theme Centuries of Avila, Mother of Interior Souls. St. Paul demands of us that in every way possible we should try to the best of our ability to be like Jesus. Jesus is the lift that takes us up to enter into the Trinitarian life. But the path to this end is very narrow and difficult. It is like going through a furnace of blazing fire. But he narrates to us the hardship he had to endure to possess the Trinitarian life and the joy he experienced thereby. He writes, "What no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor the human heart conceived, what God has prepared for those who love Him." To imitate Him in His penitential life, Paul says, "I regard everything as loss because of the surpassing value of the knowledge of Christ Jesus, my Lord." When we take this arduous path, Jesus will assist us not to fall a prey to despair. On this account, St. Paul gives his own ecstatic experience. He writes that he was caught up into paradise and heard things that are not to be told, that no mortal is permitted to speak. In our attempt to get into union with God, St. Paul assures us of the sweetness God gives us, and specially by giving us the infused supernatural divine knowledge. St. Teresa beautifully explains the incredulous joy a soul experiences on attainment of the prayer of spiritual marriage, the highest possible stage of oneness with God here below. Every baptized member is called by God to this stage of prayer. If one doesn't attain it, the fault is his, because he fails to exercise great detachment from his self-centeredness and to carry strenuously the daily cross. When we see the humanizing effect in those who attain the prayer of spiritual marriage, one is sweetly and gently drawn to attempt to get into that stage of prayer. There are not wanting men, even among well-informed Christians, who fondly imagine that a person given to prayer and contemplation lives in isolation, far removed from the rest of humanity, and wholly unaware of the problems of the man of today, especially those of the suffering man. They imagine him to be devoid of human feelings, leading almost a dehumanized life, absent-minded and blind to the realities of life around him. In the past, many spiritual writers had a distorted notion of Christian perfection. They created a saint in their own image of holiness. To them, a saint is one dropped down from the clouds, as it were, without any inclination to evil. He is to be simply admired and placed in a niche up there. He seems bent upon escaping this world and entering the next. He is always protected from evil. The authors seem to vie with each other in presenting some atrocious practices in which their saint is supposed to have engaged in the name of asceticism. The result is a picture of a saint who appears hardly human and could not be imitated by the modern man. Such descriptions never inspire much desire to imitate a saint. A canonized saint is proposed by the Church for our imitation, not simply for our admiration. In this episode, we shall see how prayer has a humanizing effect and makes a man fully human and humane. Prayer, far from destroying nature, ennobles and dignifies it. Prayer is a wonderful illustration of the theological truth of agreement between the natural and the supernatural, between the principle of sound reason and the sublimest manifestation of divine grace. That grace perfects nature and never destroys it is axiomatic in Christian spirituality. The more one is united with God, the more his natural endowments reach their maximum perfection. Common sense is a dominating element of Christian spirituality. We turn to St. Teresa of Avila to substantiate this horizontal aspect of prayer. We shall highlight the humanizing effect of prayer from the emotional life of this saint. A woman of compelling physical beauty, St. Teresa was a warm, appealing, witty person, outgoing and immensely attractive. She had an unbelievable capacity for attracting and influencing people. The royal discalced nuns, who were from very high social background, felt the vital air of love in the saint, and what they said of her was, "Blessed be God who has granted us to see a saint we can all imitate. She talks, sleeps, and eats as we do, and is neither ceremonious in speech nor mellifluous in spirit." This statement makes St. Teresa really endearing to every one of us and fashions a remarkably vivid and pleasant portrait of the saint. It makes sanctity on the individual level a perfectly reasonable aim. There is nothing superhuman or extraordinary with a saint which we can only admire and not imitate. Shortly before her death, St. Teresa said, "Three things have been said of me. In my youth, that I was beautiful. Later, that I was clever. And now that I am holy. For a short time, I believed the first two, and now I have repented of it. But I have never been so deluded as to dream of believing the third." Her protests notwithstanding, Teresa did possess the unusual combination of beauty, cleverness, and sanctity. She had a flashing smile, and she radiated an air of intense vitality despite her continual poor health. All her life, she remained an extremely neat person, and she was very conscious of the demands of personal hygiene, an attitude which unfortunately was not shared by many nuns and friars of that epoch in Europe. She retained her interest in personal grooming until the end of her life. After she had viewed her portrait painted by a lay brother, John of Misery, when she was 60 years old and at the height of mystical experience, she exclaimed, "May God forgive you, Brother John. Imagine, after all I have suffered at your hands, you pain me so bleary-eyed and ugly." See, St. Teresa, living in the highest possible union with God here below, looks quite ordinary and personable. Thank you.